Welcome to another episode of Gotham City Central, a Batman podcast, and the Multiverse Musings vidcast.
Hey, this is Note here. It's actually the DC Comics Chronicles. Get it right, Adam.
As always, I'm your host, Adam, aka the Bruce Wayne of the network. And with me is my co-host, Donnie, the Emerald Enthusiast, who can still be the Emerald Enthusiast on a Batman podcast because Batman and Green Lantern often team up. As long as he doesn't try and punch me in the face, we're good. But Donnie, how's it going?
Hey, what's up, Batman fans? It's the man whose ring runs on fanboy energy, the podcasting machine, the big nerd in green, leaping from Oa to the grimy streets of Gotham. We're here to talk about Detective Comics.
And Batman once wore a Green Lantern ring at one point in an Elseworlds.
Yes, for a very short time, yes. And Batman and Green Lanterns, they've had quite the colorful history.
Yes, indeed. And that color is often green with a little black and gray thrown in for good measure.
Yeah.
But enough about the various colors. As mentioned, based on the title of the show, we're here to cover some Batman, specifically Batman-related comic books, specifically Detective Comics. So, Donnie, we did a couple issues of Detective, and now we're in catch-up mode. So we're gonna not catch up on your hot dog, but catch up as in getting caught up with the book. And so, Detective Comics, which issues are we covering today, sir?
We are covering 1037 through 1042.
Indeed.
Yes.
All right. So, give us a little bit. Where do you want to start with 10?
Well, issue number 1000 1037.
Indeed.
That's a huge number.
It really is. I like those big numbers. They feel
Especially if you own them all, makes you feel good, you know.
Yeah, well, I don't own all 137.
1037.
Yes. Sorry. Yeah, my math is not good. Clearly, you can tell I didn't do good in math, but yeah, I don't own all 1,037 of them, but I own a good, good chunk.
It'd be nice just to own number 27. The original number
good
27.
Good Lord, yeah. Oh, yeah. I own a couple of 27s. It's not that one, though.
I've never seen one up close.
I think I might faint if I did this year.
I'd be too scared to touch it, but anyway.
This is where my boy was born, wow.
That's a real piece of history right there. Anyway,
I'd go back in time and steal that. Anyway, continue on.
If there were actually working wormholes, that's the first thing I would do. If I went back in time, I'd go to all the comic book shops, or there weren't comic book shops back then. I'd go to all the newsstands and say, Action Comics, Detective Comics,
Give me 100 of them.
Yeah. Comic Cavalcade, give me all of it. So, back in the present day, we are back with Detective Comics 1037, a story called The Neighborhood Part 4. There's also some backup stories. But what we're seeing right now is that Bruce Wayne is implicated in the murder of Sarah Worth. In particular, due to the appearance of Lady Clayface as Sarah Worth. She looked like Sarah. So Batman is also suspected by the police, as well as Sarah's father, which is Mr. Worth, who is this gigantic villain who I like a lot, by the way. I think he's been really entertaining in this.
Yeah.
So Bruce is having to take extra care as he moves about. He's getting help from Huntress and Oracle. So what do you think of the opening scenes of this?
I certainly like the fact that this, by necessity, given the situation that Bruce is in, we're seeing a lot more interaction between the Bat family.
Yeah,
and that's an aspect of the Batman world that I love, that I am glad to be seeing employed more. I've always felt that in the last, decade or two, they've kind of been, the Bat family's been present, but they've been off on their own little islands. Nightwing's doing his thing, and Nightwing, the Birds of Prey had a title for an extended period of time. So we haven't really seen the level of cooperation and connectivity that we're seeing now, and I like it. So I will say that. Batman being, or Bruce being, somewhat of a suspect for the murder because Lady Clayface decided to show up in the guise of Sarah Worth is really interesting in the sense that this is why it sucks not living in Wayne Manor, because if you lived in Wayne Manor, this wouldn't be an issue because you wouldn't have neighbors.
Right?
Right? So
well, I really like the direction that they've taken here. There, as you know, the old saying goes, don't solve a problem for your hero until you create two more.
Yeah.
I believe it's Mariko Tamaki's the writer, right, of this story? Yeah. Okay. She has created like a dozen problems for Bruce all at the same time.
Yeah.
And so he's dealing with all these things. And I really like how this story is kind of going on multiple levels. You have Batman as a suspect. You get to see the first really good look at Vile in this issue, who's a really interesting villain, as well as the Batman running from Mr. Worth. You have all that going on.
Yeah, and it looks like Mr. Vile looks like something out of a horror movie, which is cool.
Yeah, well, see, I like that. This had kind of a classic Batman feel, like Batman in the sewers, but at the same time, you also had this horror movie thing going on. You had all this emotion going on. You had team ups with Mr. Worth, eventually with Mr. Worth and the Penguin. There's so much going on around this that made you feel like a very big, tense, urgent story.
Yeah, it does feel very big and like very, very impactful. Like it's gonna have a lasting impact, but at the same time, it's very personal as well, and I like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I really like a few of the things here that I want to point out about this issue is that there's a point where Bruce is being questioned by the police. He's in a cell in the police station, and seemingly everybody leaves, and the implication is that Mr. Worth has paid them off.
Yeah.
And then he attacks the police station with a rocket launcher.
Because those are just lying around.
But I guess when you're as rich as Mr.
When
Worth,
you're that rich, yeah, of course. Yeah.
I thought that was an interesting visual, and I like the fact that Bruce kind of crawls out of the rubble.
Yeah.
And when he does, the lettering, when Mr. Worth is saying his name, Bruce Wayne, the lettering is blurred, kind of the way it would be like if your ears are ringing. And I thought that was a stroke of genius.
That was very well done, very, very creative. I like that. Mm-hmm. At first, I was like, wait a minute. Do I need to go to the eye doctor? Or my eyes kind of. But then I looked at him like, okay, no, it's just the effect. Okay, we're good. So yeah, but that was very clever, and the explosion was really like the visual, the art of the
yes,
like the ball of fire. It looked like destruction. Like it looked like, oh, crap. This. I mean,
was that Carl Mostert that did the pencils on that?
I don't believe so.
Or was Dustin Yen?
No, wasn't it? Hold on.
Because there's two other backup stories. I can't remember who did what.
Was it Dan? It was either Dan Mora or Victor.
Well, Mora I know did the cover. So
I'll tell you right now who. 1037. Let's take a look. Because I know a couple of the guys you're speaking of did the backup.
Hmm? Because we have 6 issues today, we're just going to touch briefly on the backup stories because we don't want to stretch this out to 2 hours. We want this to be a refresher for people who are either reading and want to kind of delve into it, or if you're not reading it for whatever, you need to know what's going on. We're letting you know that.
Yeah, so. we want to try and give you a reason to read. So Bogdanovic, I screwed that up. See now. See, that's what your methodology. You're trying to get me to say the name, so I screw them up. No, it's Bogdanovic, who I almost did again, who did the art for the main story.
Yeah, Bogdanovich, I think Victor Bogdanovich.
Yeah, there it is. Thank you.
I think that's how you say his name.
Yes,
but I just want to say for all of these issues, you and I have talked before that. You can have a good artist, and the art can be good, but if it doesn't match the tone of the story, it can detract.
Yes.
In these issues, you get this kind of grimy looking, gritty looking art that lends itself perfectly to what's going on here.
Yeah, and there's the perfect image, Donnie, of we talked about the explosion and the effect of the word, the dialogue, but right off the bat, pun intended, there's sort of one, it's the early pages where Huntress is standing over, the dead body, I would assume, right?
Right.
And then in that and there's a small panel of Batman swinging in the sky, and it's kind of shadowed.
Mm-hmm.
And you see the cape is really in full effect there. Like that shot of Batman swinging is awesome.
Yeah.
It looks great. And then the full page, on the next page where he descends and he's kneeling with the cape. It's just such great imagery. It reminds me kind of. It takes me back to when Greg Capullo was working on Batman back in the New 52.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. So great art there too.
But I like the coloring on the scene too after the explosion. It's reds and yellows and oranges, and they're all kind of fused together to give you this really kind of a hot, almost volcanic type of scene. And I really like how that looked. So the coloring,
and it seems like,
very well done.
Seems like whenever those colors are used in DC, the implication is that crap's hit the fan, right? So whenever you see red, predominantly with DC, it's not a good thing.
Colors by Jordi Belair, by the way.
Yes.
So, yes, the pencils were Victor Bogdanovich. Excellent job, as well as by Mariko Tamaki, who, by the way, is taking a whole lot of undue heat because of I'm Not Starfire. It's actually not bad. I read it. Even as a middle-aged man, it's not that bad.
Nice.
So
I haven't read it. And then there's that last page where Batman is punching Mr. Worth.
Yeah, that's how things kind of end for Batman. Is he goes down to the sewer. Bruce does to find some of his Batman gear. He gets it on, and as soon as he gets the gear on, he finds Mr. Worth, who's followed Bruce Wayne down, and Batman confronts him, and the fight starts.
Yeah, that splash page of the uppercut. That's pretty cool.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah,
I dig it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, couple quick points on the back stories here. We get one called 3 Minutes, which it's a flashback to the early days of Lucius Fox coming to be a player in the Batman world.
Yes.
Then there's another one called Exclusive, which is Deb Donovan of the Gotham Gazette kind of running down the power players in Gotham City.
Yeah. And I like it because, I'm always up for a flashback to the earlier days of Batman when, when certain players became part of the mythos in a bigger way. So I like that. But the Deb Donovan character definitely comes into play in the main issues later on. So it's good to introduce her. And
that's a good point. Yeah.
Get a feel for her here. So yeah, I liked it.
Mm-hmm. So do you want to rate each issue, or do you just want to rate this arc or whatever as a whole? How do you want to do that?
I'll leave it up to you. How do you want to? Do you want to rate the whole thing as a whole?
Yeah, let's just rate the whole thing. Since we're going through more quickly than we usually do, let's just rate it at the end.
Okay. Yeah, we'll do that. Yeah.
So Detective 1038 opens up with this epic struggle for Gotham City that's happening below the streets. And of course, it's the continuation of the previous issue, and that is Batman and Mr. Worth. They are locked in this struggle in this subterranean micro cave system. And of course, Mr. Worth is actually still trying to use the rocket launcher, which is having bad effects because Batman's knocking him around, and Mr. Worth is still firing the rocket launcher, which is bringing things down upon them. And Bruce eventually gets the kind of the final upper hand, and he's able to subdue Mr. Worth because Lady Clayface as Sarah comes out of the darkness, and Mr. Worth is obviously very confused as to what he's seeing. And he thinks that it's Sarah, and of course she turns back into Lady Clayface and kind of dissolves. And of course he is undone by this.
Yeah, he's incensed and he blames, of course, Batman is the fault. What did you do?
Yeah, exactly. And that's not the end of Mr. Worth, by the way. I mean, he does. The police do come for him, but he doesn't stay in police custody very long.
Of course not, because
Yeah,
he's got half of them on the payroll.
and we see towards the end of this issue actually that Deb Donovan is strapped. She is strapped to a chair in the sewers, and there are bombs all around her. And again, I like how much of these stories like take place in the sewers with Huntress, and it's kind of, it's dark and it's green. There's a lot of like, green colorings in this, and not just because I like green, but it gives you this kind of.
Really, you like green? I would have never guessed, Donnie.
Maybe just a little. But yeah, I like how gritty this looks, and you see Batman and Huntress moving around in the sewers, and it just gives you this really cool vibe. And
what I think really works about it is that I think this story, detective in general, is able to find a good balance of you've got the very comic booky sci-fi aspect, which is Lady Clayface, but then you can boil it down to and Mr. Vile comes into play later, but you have those two more sci-fi supernatural elements, right? Mm-hmm. But then you have, at the same time, we're dealing with a murder mystery and that down and dirty and gritty kind of aspect.
That's what I like about this, like how kind of multi-layered it is. There's so many things going on, and I like that. I tend to like bigger stories, and I don't really think about Batman necessarily being a big story all the time, but this definitely is. So,
right now, just off the top of my head, is it you? Is it just me, or does Mr. Worth kind of look like a slightly more rotund version of Kraven?
Yeah, you could say he would be. Well, he's a giant, so he's bigger than Kraven. Yeah. He looks older than Kraven, and
but again, similar, they have very similar mustache sensibilities.
Yeah, so he's got the good facial hair game going on.
Yeah, and the coat is very very Kraven-like.
Well, again, that's that, and he nearly brings the city to its knees again with the rocket launcher. He's still running around the city with the rocket launcher. So
there's that one page, Donnie, where Batman and Huntress are running in the sewer. That's the best drawn page. I mean, and the whole book, it looks good, but that's the best, my favorite page.
Yeah.
Where she asked Batman, just to give you context, where she asked Batman, are you talking in your head or what? Because she's asking him questions, and he's not saying anything.
Yeah.
But we're seeing like the thought bubble that Batman's thinking. And so she's like, are you talking in your head again or what?
Yeah. Well, I like at the end too, you see, Mr. Vile after Mr. Worth uses the rocket launcher bazooka. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. I'm not an expert on military grade weapons, but
oh, darn it, that's why I hired you.
After he uses that, you see Vile kind of watching the city from a window, and he's like, yes, because he's got his own goals here. So
talk about creepy neighbors. That guy looks like one.
Yeah. Well, you get a really good shot of him on the next issue. He's on the cover with his mouth open and the like scarab looking thing, the green scarab coming out of his mouth.
Yeah.
Woo! That is an ugly image, and I mean that in a good way. So,
right, that's what it's supposed to be. Yeah.
And it says, from the depths enter Vile.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, did you want to touch on the back issue for this one?
Was it called March of the Penguin, I believe, was the backup story. And was there another one?
I think it was just that one.
Yeah.
I like that it focused on the two Batgirls. Again, by Batgirls, I mean Stephanie Brown and Cassandra Cain.
Mm-hmm.
The actual legitimate Cassandra Cain, not that Cassandra Cain in name only from the Birds of Prey movie. But anyway, by the way, I like the Birds of Prey movie. I just didn't like Cassandra Cain. Anyway, or the portrayal of Cassandra Cain. Nothing against that actor, the young actress. But again, that just underscores that I like that. Clearly, Batman's a busy guy, so especially at the moment. So it makes sense that Oracle would have the Batgirls.
That's a good point. A lot of good visuals with the Batgirls here.
Yeah, I love the art, and like I said, why can't more than one? There's been more than one Batgirl, so why can't there be multiple Batgirls? And why can't they team up? Like where? You know, we don't have to get so tribal about. Oh well, I like this Batgirl. Well, I like that Batgirl. Why can't we have both of them, or all of them? And I like that Oracle's been like, you know what? Yeah, we can, and I should be the one. You know, sort of because I was the original Batgirl. I could be the one that's organized, you know, that's kind of basically the ringleader of all the Batgirls.
Good
so
point.
I liked it.
Yeah. I also liked in this issue, which was really cool, you see a flashback and you get the origin of not necessarily Mr. Vile as a villain, but when he was a kid, you see what makes him this way, how he has this parasitic scarab-looking thing in his mouth.
Yeah.
You see that he was swimming when he was 8 years old, that he picked this thing up, and it has just transformed him into this, you know, ravenous, horrific villain.
Moral of the story: unless it's a seashell, don't pick it up.
Yeah, that's a good rule of thumb there, sir. But yeah, I mean, and you can feel this too. You see him like, you know, getting examined by a doctor when he's young, and you can feel like the discomfort and the pain that he's going through.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And again, you also see like the birth of his hunger, and he is actually, you know, he passes this parasite onto people.
I thought you were going to say he passes gas. I'm like, wait a minute, that's. Where did you read that? I didn't read that.
Well, but maybe that happens too when he's passing the parasite along. You don't know.
Probably, yeah.
It would stand to reason.
It certainly is gruesome enough, so why not?
Yeah. In fact, at this point in this issue, Deb Donovan actually gets infected.
Yeah. And
she attacks Batman, and Huntress has to intervene.
Like I like again, if DC's gonna do this thing where a bunch of their $4.99 books have back issues, the only ask that I have is make them have meaning to the larger story, because if they don't, I don't necessarily want to read about side characters.
Right.
You know,
but I will say this, you know, Huntress plays a very important role here. We see that the parasite that Vile is passing along, it's light sensitive. That comes into play later on. Huntress figures that out.
You mean you could just inject light into it and it'll go? It sounds like somebody.
What do you know? You can actually.
I've heard this before from someone, Donnie.
Oh, only this time it's fictional and fun. Hearing that before was just like, oh my goodness. Anyway.
Well, speaking of Mr. Vile, there is one in real life. That's not his name.
Yeah, let's not go there.
I love all these comics are just giving me the parallels are uncanny.
And yeah, now you also see at the end of this, it kind of leaves you hanging on the fact that Oracle is actually infected in this too, because she catches up with Vile, and man, that's a powerful image.
Huntress?
Yeah, Huntress. What did I say? Oracle. I'm sorry, Huntress. Yeah, Huntress. She has this. She puts some cuffs on Vile. She gets too close, and when she does, he infects her, and you see like these glowing green tentacles hanging out of her mouth.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just really like a horror story, and I really appreciate it.
This is like a Todd McFarlane wet dream, I would think, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. So, yeah. In the meantime, Batman is still fighting with Mr. Worth. Eventually, he ends up fighting with Oracle. Huntress. He ends up fighting with Huntress because she's infected. So, I don't know why I keep saying Oracle, but yeah. Huntress. Yeah.
Donnie secretly wants an Oracle solo book. That's why he's...
But yeah, so eventually, you know, she tells him, you know, it's light that can affect this thing. So at the end of this story, though, it's actually interesting. Bruce decides that to get the police off of his back, to continue with this search for what's going on, he's got to turn himself in as Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
So, again, shout out to the writer, Mariko Tamaki, pencils, Victor Bogdanovich, the colors, I believe, Jordi Belair again. Everything in this issue, I think, really worked together.
Yeah.
Very well.
I love it. Yeah. Again, this storyline, there's just so much going on, but like each piece of the story is getting its due. It's not being glossed over or rushed in favor of another part of the story. I really like it.
And we get a backup story called The Life and Times of Hugh Vile.
Yeah.
Which, again, another kind of, gritty flashback type of story where you see, the parasite and you see some of Vile's backstory with his brother and his mother. And, again, lends itself well to what they're doing in the main story.
See, this is the difference between, and again, I don't want to be cruel or mean, but sometimes you just have to say what it is. This is why I'm enjoying right now, at least, Detective more than Batman. And we'll cover Batman as Fear State is happening. We'll get back to Batman for Fear State. But what I was becoming disenchanted with in terms of the Batman title is, James Tynion IV was creating a bunch of different characters, a bunch of new characters, villains, and the guy there with the Ghostmaker or whatever his name is, Ghostmaker. Mm-hmm. Ghostmaker was in the backup story, which is fine, but Miracle Molly and the Rose character that he created, like there's so many characters, I don't even know who's who. That's part of the point, is that he'd create them to get one issue and then he'd create another one. And there was no time to get comfortable or familiar with the one new character. This time, we've got two new characters, Mr. Vile and Hugh Vile and Mr. Worth. Right. And we've gotten a chance to get to know a little bit about each one of them. Enough that, we feel, okay, I'm getting to know this person, I'm getting invested. One way or the other. I hate
they're both quality villains. Right. They're both, yeah.
But I have no problems with creating new bad villains, but you have to give them the time and exposure to grow and become either loved or hated, depending on the goal of why you're creating them. And I think Detective has done that correctly, where Batman has faltered in that area. So that's why, at present, I'm enjoying Detective more than Batman. So just to clarify.
Yeah. I do want to say that my favorite image of this issue is the last page of that backup story. You see, Hugh Vile with his mouth open with the parasites overcome him. And it kind of reminds me of the Reapers in Blade 2.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, and of course the thing is coming out of his mouth. It reminds me a little bit of the Predator films, as well as the Strain. It's very classic kind of horror here, but this picture is great.
Also, Donnie, I'm curious. Does that kind of imagery appeal to you because Venom is often seen with his tongue hanging out?
I like. That's a good point. There are a lot of aliens with a lot of distinctive tongues, aren't there?
Donnie likes some tongue. I'm not even gonna. I was gonna say Donnie likes tongue action, but that's.
Let's keep it PG-13 now.
Oh God.
Oh man. So yeah, I like where that left off there, and I like how this story continues here.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Agreed.
Yeah. So between Vile and Mr. Worth, which one do you think is more valuable going forward?
I'm gonna say Mr. Worth because he can be the guy behind the scenes pulling strings in future stories if they so choose.
That's a good point. I do like them both, though. I hope we see more.
I do enjoy them both, but I think in terms of longevity, I think Mr. Worth, because he could be that human face, he's got money, and that could be used to cause some chaos. Where currently, at present, Bruce doesn't have the money that he once had.
And this next one actually gave us a really interesting scene that was unexpected. when Bruce turns himself in and he's in a jail cell, we're
talking about 10.
Yeah, 1040 now. We're on issue number 1040. There's a drunk man in the cell with him who kind of wakes up and he's only half awake, and he tells Bruce, "I know who you are." Evidently, we see this flashback, and this guy's like, "Yeah, years ago I saw you fighting with the Joker, and you had something in your eye, and you took your cowl off." You actually see that. You took your cowl off, and I got to look at you. And it's interesting. I was like, well, where are they going to go with this? This like random guy knows that Bruce Wayne's Batman.
And
then he goes back.
I love the resolution, but
the guy goes back to sleep and he wakes up and he's like, "Huh, what?"
It's like, who are you? He had no idea who he was. But
that's lucky.
Yeah. But I will say, I love this issue for that portion, like the whole flashback portion, because it gave us Batman in that classic blue gray with the yellow oval on the chest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm a certain look. It's very easy to make me happy. Put Margot Robbie, Alexa. One way to do it is put Margot Robbie, Alexa Bliss, Gal Gadot, or any one of my Multiverse wives on the screen. That's one way. But in terms of comic book Batman happiness, give me Batman in the classic blue gray with the yellow oval, and I'm overjoyed. And I got to give a shout out, and I know you've interacted with him online, Peter M. Vera, who he's part of Batman on Film, part of the Italians for Spider-Man group, and he's part of the hashtag Team Yellow Oval contingent. So shout out to him. He, I'm sure, loved this issue for that fact as well.
Well, and we see later on in this issue things are about to get really bad for Batman, because Penguin shows up and he is teaming up with Mr. Worth.
Yeah.
And a number of other villains too.
Which is what I mean in terms of Mr. Worth's money. That can really cause some damage, because some of these villains will throw their lot in with him for some cash.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, so they're gonna use Vile to their own ends here.
Yeah, and they call themselves the Jury, right?
Yeah, the Jury, and you see Vile kind of strapped to a bed here.
What's funny is that the Penguin and those villains want Batman off the table. Mm-hmm. Mr. Worth wants Bruce Wayne taken care of because he thinks
that he killed Sarah.
Bruce killed Sarah, so
and he thinks Batman's protecting Bruce too.
Right, so he wants Bruce. They want Batman off the table. And it's like, you guys realize? Well, you don't realize, but you want the same guy taken care of. It's like, hello, like you want this. You're both really after the same guy.
Mm-hmm.
If one of you wins, you both win, or you all win.
It's funny how that works sometimes, but
yeah.
We also see a backstory in this issue. It's about Kirk Langstrom as Man-Bat.
I really enjoyed this, yeah.
Oh, I likewise. And you actually see that seemingly Man-Bat or Kirk Langstrom is killed in this, because we see Batman at a graveyard and a coffin is being lowered into the ground, and we see
so it's kind of like a coffin drop.
I like it. Which we just talked about on the podcast we recorded before this one, and that is AEW All Out. We recorded that, and that will be available on the Multiverse Musings vidcast right here on YouTube.
I set you up for that one.
I appreciate it. Was like the Lucha Brothers setting each other up, for the win. Yeah, that's right. We got it. So
that's how we roll here.
Yeah, but so we see in this this backup story, Kirk is actually like inhabited by this like literal demon that he's able to overcome, whereas in the past he's kind of fighting his like own personal demons. This one, Batman kind of helps him overcome this demon that is inhabiting him.
Yeah.
So that was just like that escalated quickly. I was like, I don't know where they're going to go with this, and oh wow, he's got this demonic thing inside of him. So, yeah, what'd you think of that backup story?
I really love the fact that it was very personable, very, very emotional, very, very like it's very character focused. Whereas like this, in the main story, we've got so much going on, right? There's 3 or 4 different balls in the air, right?
Yeah.
With this, it's much more. Here's basically 2, 3 when the wife comes into play. Characters that we're really keying in on, and you know, and it's funny because Kirk Langstrom is literally a man bat, but but the literal translation of a Batman,
right?
And he goes up, you know, and Batman. Our conception of Batman, which is Bruce Wayne in a costume, typically out to you know, to maim and brutalize his villains just enough to stop them. Now he's actively trying to get this one help.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So it's it's the dichotomy of that is rather interesting, and it shows Batman's deeper desire to, you know, everybody is capable of being saved, you know, and this is why he doesn't. I think this kind of highlights why he has that no-kill rule, because in his mind, part of it is to, you know, stop other kids from going through what he had to go through, but also in his mind, he's got that idea that everybody is deserving of a second chance and can be rehabilitated.
Well, and I think sometimes Batman gets, you know, he can be really dark, but he gets a lot of unnecessary criticism for being, people think that he doesn't have a heart.
Yeah.
But there have been many instances where writers have used, he does. You know, he's taken, you know, young kids who are threatening him, and he showed them mercy, and he's actually a philanthropist. He donates a lot of money. And I know a lot of that's another criticism of people who don't read Batman comics, by the way. They're like, oh, he could just wipe out poverty and everything in Gotham City if he wanted to with all his money. And I'm like, he's tried that. You obviously have not read the comics. You know, he tries to wipe.
Read
exactly. Read. Yeah. Plus, it would be boring. You know, there wouldn't be a book if he wiped out all crime in the city with his money. It would be interesting.
Nobody wants to read the book, the monthly title called Bruce Wayne Donates Money.
Right, exactly.
Who wants to read that?
Yeah. So again, now in this next issue, this is 1041.
Don't give DC ideas. They'll publish a book called Wayne Enterprises.
Let's
It won't take them much.
Anyway,
Lucius Fox in the boardroom.
That's one I think I'd pass on.
I'm sure Phil Boba would love that. Good friend.
So in this one, again, we see Batman back in the classic gray and blue, and Bruce is actually, and it is rendered so well in this. The colors, just, I mean, all the lines in the art, it's just great. And I always like Batman with a little bit of scruff.
Yeah, he's got a little scruff. Yeah.
Because it's like, you can tell he's been working the late hours. He hasn't had time to shave, you know.
Yeah.
Awesome. So he's headed to a warehouse. Bruce is on the run from the police. He finally gets in his Batman gear, and he wants to go to this warehouse because he's after Mr. Worth. So, you know, this picks up again. This is all, you know, every issue kind of picks up right where the other one left off. This isn't a story where you're seeing a lot of time elapse between issues.
Yeah, it's like literally the next minute.
Yeah.
Like you get a sense that all these issues are happening within a day or a couple of days.
Yeah, a couple days, couple weeks, something like
within
that.
Within a week, you know, a week or two, this is all happening.
Mm-hmm. So Batman finally does come to where the jury is, and he tells Mr. Worth, he's like, Sarah was killed by a man named Neil Betterman. He's like, you know, it wasn't me.
Yeah.
Of course, you know,
It wasn't Bruce. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So it wasn't Bruce. I should clarify that. Right.
See, if comics had music, like if you could, like, if comics were like those, the greeting cards, like the, birthdays and stuff, that you open them and they play a song or play music.
Mm-hmm.
If this comic had that capability, you'd turn the page where Batman is saying it wasn't Bruce Wayne, and instead of Bruce Wayne saying that, it'd be the song by what's that guy's name? It wasn't me, but you know that song, but Shaggy.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's the song.
You shouldn't ask me musical questions because most of the time I'm going to be like, "What?"
You've never heard of "It Wasn't Me" by Shaggy?
I do know that one, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, don't you think that would have been perfect if they turned the page and no, it wasn't me. See, we sing badly on the show, but we sing too.
That's right. But I like the interaction here with Mr. Worth because Batman, he comes in and he was like, it wasn't Bruce Wayne. But Mr. Worth looks at him and says, You protect Gotham, right? And Batman's like, yeah. And he's like, but you didn't protect my daughter. So that makes you guilty too. And I like that kind of unhinged reasoning to continue the battle. So
yeah, it's like, unfortunately, he can't save everybody.
Right. Exactly. Especially in a place where he's not there. So
not even Superman could.
And Superman struggles with at times because no matter how powerful he is, he can't save everyone.
Yeah, I mean, even with the entire Bat family at your disposal, you've got Dick and Nightwing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Doing his thing. He can't just, if he's in the middle of a battle in Bloodhaven, Bruce can't come and say, hey, pop over here, drop what you're doing, drop that mass murderer you're dealing with, and come over here because we've got a situation. They're all, like, Gotham is, the point of that is Batman being unable to be everywhere at once underscores the fact that he's human, but also Gotham is such a crappy place in terms of the amount of crime that not even an entire Bat family is suffice to get that city under control.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And actually in this, and you see, and I really like this story point too, the jury is able to extract the parasite from Vile and they weaponize it. They shoot it at Bruce and now he's infected. Yeah. That was some really scary imagery at the end because, you see Bruce rise up and his eyes are red and his skull's on fire, metaphorically, not like Ghost Rider, but he's holding his head and you can tell he's in pain.
Ghost Rider?
That'd be interesting. I'd read that book.
Oh yeah.
What'd you think of that image when he got infected?
It's so. Again, I said it as a joke earlier, but like, this is like a Todd McFarlane. Like if Todd McFarlane was doing Batman in a steady rotation, this is what I imagined it'd be like. Like he'd create. This is very in the vein, in the realm of Todd McFarlane.
Yeah. And we get another backup story. The main story cuts off with Batman infected, and then we cut to a backup story with Deb Donovan again, trying to track down what's going on with all these infections, all these weird deaths over Gotham.
I really like it's cool because using a reporter kind of gives you average Joe's perspective. Like this is what
that's a good point. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because we're getting it from like Batman and the heroes of Gotham's point of view when we read the main story. But how does that look? How does all this chaos look to the man on the street or the person on the street?
Yeah.
So I like the exploration of this and the discovery of all this from her point of view.
So let's move on to issue number 1042.
Yes, the finale.
Yes.
Okay.
Again, this opens up with Batman infected, and I love the imagery here of Batman again with the like green glowing tentacles coming out of his mouth, and Batman kind of struggling to overcome this thing.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's so good. And actually, the parasite and like you see the visual through Batman's eyes is Mr. Worth, and he's like go get him.
Yeah. Because like you're seeing it through Batman's eyes, but the parasite's in control.
Yeah, it's in control.
That was really cool. That was really cool.
Yeah, it was. And Mr. Worth is rightly terrified when Batman comes for him and is like, trying to eat him, inject him with the parasite or whatever.
You know what it kind of reminded me of? It kind of reminded me of that scene in Batman Begins when Batman uses the fear gas on Dr. Crane.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
And Dr. Crane sees him as that bat monster kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Again, I still got flashbacks to the Reapers in Blade 2 because that's what
that's true.
they would pull people close and their mouths would open up. That's what it reminded me of.
We need a Blade ongoing, damn it. That's just don't get me started. Come on, Marvel.
That's a different podcast. That's Marvel.
It's not the Marvel podcast, but give me what I want. Give me a Blade solo book.
All right, Batista, give me what I want. So a big fight ensues between this parasite or vile controlled Batman and Mr. Worth. And you actually see that the parasite is urging Batman on to kill him. Yeah. Fighting against Batman's own morality. And it's probably my favorite moment in this comic is Batman's kind of holding Mr. Vile over from a building and he's saying kill him, and you see Batman all of a sudden no.
Yeah.
And you see him his dominance, his will asserting itself, against the monster within him. And that's a really powerful image. So
again, and it's and this is why I love the character so much is because a lot of his problems would be solved. I mean, if he just snaps the Joker's neck, or the Penguin's neck, or the Riddler, or you name the villain, if he just puts them out of their misery, Gotham would be, in a sense, a lot safer. The beauty of Batman is his determination not to stoop to that level. And that principle that everybody can be, has the opportunity to be rehabilitated. That's why he puts them in Arkham.
Right. He doesn't, sometimes people die fighting Batman, but he doesn't execute people. He's not,
right.
he's not the Punisher.
As much as I love look, the Punisher's great. And sometimes in the real world that we live in with a certain segment of moron that I'm not going to mention because I've had it up to here with, and I'm not talking about Twitter people that hashtag something. I'm talking about real world morons that are causing a lot of chaos with their stupid beliefs. But man, sometimes I think, man, if the Punisher was around, I'd sick him on a specific group of people right now. However, I applaud Batman in the sense that he doesn't go that extra mile. And this goes to the argument where like you said, people have died fighting Batman, and we've seen that in movies, right?
Yeah.
The Joker was a victim of his own issues because he was the one that was clinging to the gargoyle, and then
right. Right.
You're shit out of luck when Batman's trying to save Vicky Vale and your foot gets tangled on the gargoyle, dumbass. It's your own problem.
I love the end of that movie. I thought that was perfect.
Oh, and the laugh with the and then with Ra's al Ghul in Batman Begins, he's the one who set the train in motion, the thing with the train in motion. Kind of he's a victim of his own circumstance. So when Batman kills, usually in movies, with the exception of the bomb down the clown's pants in Batman Returns, which I still find funny.
Well, likewise.
I think that's the only time that Batman's kind of willingly.
Well, he set the other guy on fire from the Red Triangle gang when he turned the car around.
You could theoretically, I mean, you're burnt.
Right.
You got one hell of a sunburn, but you could still survive that.
Maybe. I think it's too much of a shot. But anyway, that's.
But for the most part, 9 times out of 10, he's not intentionally trying to kill you. Is the point?
Right. That's Batman's no kill rule in a nutshell. It's not that he absolutely won't take a life. If it's in the middle of a battle, it happens like a soldier. But he's not going to execute somebody.
But in the comics, they make a point of not doing it, and
right. Yeah.
This is why. That's why I gravitate towards this character, because it's fun watching him beat the living crap out of somebody, to the point where they're probably going to end up in hospital. But listen, the Joker deserves to end up in a hospital.
They might wish they were dead, but they'll actually be dead. So.
Some of the things the Joker does deserves to be in a hospital.
Well, back to this issue, I like the fact that after he finishes with Mr. Worth, the Parasite is telling him, now you go after Huntress. And I didn't say Oracle. Huntress, you go after her.
Right.
And he's like, no. And then he actually cuffs his hands together, his own hands.
Yeah.
That was a really interesting visual to watch this inner struggle with Batman.
His willpower, his intelligence is really on display here. Yeah.
Yeah. So, eventually he does go after the Huntress, but at least he has cuffed his own hands, and he's trying to fight back against this, mental invader.
Yeah. Yeah. No, great stuff. And then, like I said, the use of Huntress here, and the fact that they both help each other out. They both have a hand in assisting the other one. And again, both, even though this is detective and Batman is a star, Huntress got a lot of time to shine throughout the course of this arc, and I really like that.
Well, she's the one who actually kind of saves the day here because she shoots this I guess you could call it the alpha, the parasite that comes out of Vile, and when she does, he just kind of starts to sizzle and disintegrate, and he loses control of Batman.
Yeah.
That was, and I mean, for a horror tinged book, that was like a perfect ending to see him just kind of smoking and deteriorating.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, that was a really fitting ending to this type of story.
And then at the end, Bruce and Huntress Helena share a scene where they basically said, if you need anything, I'm here, right? Mm-hmm. So there's that sense of, and I like that.
Right. And actually, this story ends, and we do get a little bit of they kind of leave a thread here, just in case Vile wants to come back. You see that his body is in a mortuary, and they're doing the autopsy on him, and there's an egg that drops off of the table onto the floor. It reminded me of the worms in the movie, the movie and the novel Dreamcatcher by Stephen King.
Yeah.
So I like it.
It's a horror tinge, and I'm not typically a horror guy, but I think it worked. I think for this story and the type of horror that was being employed, I think it all worked well.
Yeah, and you see one of those eggs kind of rolling towards a grate.
So Mr. Vile could.
Yeah.
The beauty of the way this arc ends is Mr. Worth is missing.
Yeah.
Like they say, he's not dead, right? So there's that. And Mr. Vile, there's remnants of him still in play here. So they could both come back following the Fear State event if they so choose.
Right.
Down the road.
And there's also a backup story called What the Profanity, it just gives you a bunch of symbols, is Task Force Z.
Yeah.
And this actually it's really funny. It's a meeting between Deb Donovan and Red Robin.
Red Hood.
Red Hood, and they're like in this diner, and he's just like eating everything in sight, and everybody's kind of staring around at him. And I like kind of the humor that they used here. It's not out of place at all.
No.
Yeah.
And I'm loving. I've always liked Red Hood, but with the way Titans have really put a shine on him in live action, I'm really loving the character even more. And Task Force Z is going to involve zombies. Mm-hmm. And the Suicide Squad and Red Hood.
Yeah, and by the way, Red Hood, he skipped out on the bill. He just left her with the bill.
Of course. Yeah, I mean, really, one of the adopted sons of Bruce Wayne skips out on the bill. What kind of?
Right. And she didn't have her wallet, so.
Yeah, I guess she's doing the dishes. But no, so that Task Force Z, the miniseries. I think it's a 6-issue miniseries or so. It starts in October for Halloween. That might be something we look at once it's done. We'll review it. Since it kind of popped up in this book, we'll see how it goes and maybe do a review of the whole story once it's over. So yeah, but I'm intrigued, and you're right. It was funny, the whole coffee shop vibe.
Yeah, I liked it. Yeah. Of course, really cool. that actually ends, and I'm assuming this is going to pick up in Fear State. you actually see Deb Donovan. She's calling the police after Red Hood has this battle, and she's whacked by a bat from behind, and you see her like bloody glasses and her phone on the ground, and then the story ends.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure it'll either continue in Fear State or Task Force Z. We'll see which one, but one of the two will. Because I know at the end of the book it said enter Fear State, right? So
yes, yeah,
we'll see.
So what do you think of this overall, like this arc?
The overall storyline, I'm going to give it a solid 4.5 out of 5 for the writing.
Mm-hmm.
I really like we've talked about the blend of a street level murder investigation and the supernatural stuff. I thought it was a good balance.
Likewise.
And, they created 2 new characters that they gave us time to get familiar with. They also highlighted Bat Family interactions with Batman, Oracle, and Huntress. And it all just came together really nicely and told a really full, complete, easy-to-follow storyline, even though they were giving us a lot of stuff in there. And then the art between Victor Bogdanovich, right, and Dan Mora,
right,
was just top-tier Batman imagery. So I'm going to give the art a 5. A full 5.
My rating is the same. I'm going to give the art a 5. I thought the art really lent itself well to the story, and the writing 4.5. So, yeah.
That's how we're going to do. Donnie and I have kind of sort of made a decision to kind of cover stories, with the exception of Green Lantern, because we started doing single issues. We'll continue the single issue Green Lantern stuff. But in terms of covering comics, we're going to do them in like each storyline in bunches, so like a story arc. We think that's the best way going forward. The next thing we're probably going to have to do in terms of the Bat-related stuff is probably going to be predominantly Fear State. So what we'll do is maybe, instead of going back and reading those Batman issues that really sort of focus more on creating new characters, what I would suggest we'll do is go like full bore into Fear State and cover. Okay. We're not going to cover every single Fear State issue because there's a lot of books that cover the Fear State kind of event. But what I was thinking we could key in on is maybe the Batman, Detective, and Nightwing portions of the Fear State stuff. That'll be because those are the big, in terms of the Bat books, the big 3.
Okay.
We're also going to be doing a little bit of a deep dive into Harley Quinn for a very specific purpose. A little bit later, I don't want to say what it is yet because I think we've got something scheduled for the mid-October in terms of the Harley Quinn stuff.
Yes.
So I don't want to get too specific, but it's really cool. And I want to make sure it pans out first before I give you a specific of what I'm alluding to. But I'm really excited about talking about Harley Quinn with a specific person that's going to join us. Okay. But for the purposes of the Fear State, I think if we key in on those 3 books, will be good. I do want to, when we do cover Batman again before Fear State, I want it to be Nightwing, where we left off with Nightwing, because that book is like chef kiss good. But the point is, for stuff like Justice League and and the Superman in action, we're going to do more story arc based. So like as a whole, instead of issue by issue, instead of combining 2 issues of Batman, 2 issues of Superman, 2 issues of action, I think it's just a better way of doing it is if we attack it as a story arc. Mm-hmm. I think that those will be the best way about going about it from now on.
Okay.
And you seem to be on board with that when we talk privately.
I'm fine. So, yeah. So, I do want to say one more thing before we sign off here. There's a tribute in the last issue that we talked about at the back to Robson Rocha, who was a DC artist, passed away untimely death at the age of 41. He worked on Green Lanterns. He was a part of that mythos. So I just wanted to thank him for that. And, go with God, brother. We appreciate all your contributions to the comic book world.
And again, I try not to get preachy on here, but I mean, we've lost that great talent because of the pandemic. I can't force anybody to do anything. But please, if you're on the fence and you're a reader of comic books, a lover of comic books, a lover of great art, we lost an artist. I lost him. I don't know his vaccination status. I don't know what. I know he was in Brazil, and I know the situation there in terms of getting a vaccine is difficult. But in countries where it's readily available and we have access to it, consider, for your own health, for the health of your fellow man, consider getting vaccinated, please. That's all I ask. I'm not going to force anybody to do anything. I'm not going to insult anybody. Just strongly consider it, and that's all I'll say. But yes, respect to that individual. His talent was immense, and it will live on forever. So that's all I got to say. But we'll be back covering more fun stuff, namely comics, all of DC, and of course Fear State as it pertains to Batman. But until next time, if you want to talk to us about this run of Detective, or Green Lantern, or Flash, or Marvel, or wrestling, as we touched on before, or Ninja Turtles, or He-Man, because it's PowerCon weekend as we record this. Hopefully, there's some He-Man news that I haven't checked Twitter to find yet. But if you want to talk about all this stuff with me or Donnie or Steven or anybody, but specifically me and Donnie right now because Donnie's the one here, so he can give his plug. Donnie, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter as the Emerald Enthusiast. Let's talk comics. Let's talk collectibles. Let's talk Green Lantern.
And if you want to talk to me on social media, it's at Adam_LeafSfan. We have the Multiverse Musings podcast network, Twitter at MMNPDC. We have the Facebook page, which is listed in the links in the description below. I should say the link is listed there. Click it. I'll add you, and we can continue the conversation from there, if you so choose. But remember that this issue, this run of Detective Comics, is forever. From the first time we see Batman back in the blue and gray with the yellow oval to the last. So long, everybody.
So long, everyone.